a word about the choir. I don't know if you know this, but the choir is made up of members from various churches in this community. And that's a great testimony in itself. Mark Walz was a pastor to so many in this community. And this community was his parish. And that's a good thing. On July 13th, 2005, on WalzHope, Mark shared a portion of the previous day's reading from the devotional classic, Streams in the Desert. He shared this: faith grows during storms. These are just 4 little words, but what significance they have to someone who has endured life-threatening storms. Faith is that God-given ability that, when exercised, brings the unseen into plain view. It deals with the supernatural and makes things impossible possible. And yes, it grows during storms. The strongest trees are found not in the thick shelter of the forest, but out in the open, where winds from every direction bear down upon them. The fierce winds bend and twist them until they become giant in stature. These are the trees that tool makers seek for handles for their tools, because of the wood's strength. And then Mark added these words: I feel like this kind of tree, though not very strong. And my prayer is that God will use me as His tool, a tool that will testify to His miraculous healing power and His saving grace. As I grow in my faith through this storm, I pray others will come to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior. To God be the glory as this journey, this storm, this story continues. Mark's fervent prayer was that others would come to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Is there any doubt that God has answered Mark's prayer? Is there any doubt that Mark's life testified to the miraculous healing power and saving grace of God? Is there any doubt that Mark Walz displayed God's strength in his life? Is there any doubt that Mark Walz was an inspiration and a testimony of the hope we have in Jesus Christ? Even in the planning of this service, Mark desired that others would come to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior. To God be the glory this evening. I'm not sure that I have ever known anyone quite like Mark Walz. Someone who loved life. Someone who fought as hard. Someone who kept the faith through the trials of life. Someone who cared for others the way he did. Someone who gave thanks in all circumstances. Just a few weeks ago, as he was spending the day in the infusion room at the hospital, the same day he began to plan this service, I noticed something very simple yet very powerful. Something Mark said. As the nurse came into the room and took Mark's blood pressure, after she finished, she was slipping the blood pressure cuff off of his arm. Mark looked her in the eye and said, "Thanks, Valerie." It may not seem like a great thing, but in Mark's weakened condition in the final weeks of his life, he continued to love and care and value others. Mark had a way of making everybody feel like they were the most important person in the world. I told Julie a few weeks ago that I wonder how many hundreds of people feel like Mark is their best friend. Mark had a way, the ability of making you feel special. When you were in Mark's presence, you knew you were valued. You knew your life was important. Isn't that the way Jesus made people feel? Years ago at Aldersgate Camp, Art Logue would sing the song, "I love you with the love of the Lord." Yes, I love you with the love of the Lord. I can see in you the glory of our King. And I love you with the love of the Lord. Mark lived that song. He saw in others the glory of our King, and he loved them with the love of the Lord. He loved you with the love of the Lord. And Mark, as Jim said, Mark often showed that love by joking around. Mark Walz is the reason we added caller ID to our phone service. 10 years ago, when we moved into the parsonage in Inez, one of the first people to call and welcome us was Mark. I answered the phone and I heard this voice on the other end ask, "Do you help people?" I said, what kind of help do you need? He said, "I just need some fried chicken. I've got 5 kids to feed." And the next day we called Bell South. That was just one of the things Mark taught me. And it's something that I have done to other pastors when they move to a new church. Mark was a great teacher. And he often chose to teach by example and by allowing others to be involved in the lesson. He didn't just talk about missions, he took people to the mission field. He helped build a school in Belize. He helped build a church in Costa Rica. He worked in a medical mission in Costa Rica. He helped bring hope to the victims of Hurricane Katrina. He taught pastoral care in a hospital in Russia. He didn't just talk about caring for his neighbors, he picked up a hammer and he helped build a habitat house. Even when he was sick, he was volunteering on a habitat build. And even when his friends were telling him he shouldn't be there because he was sick, he was there. He didn't want to sit around. He wanted to live. I was touched this last week by a couple of comments on Facebook. Comments made by 2 individuals who were youth when Mark was working at the conference office. A former youth who is now on a church staff in Colorado wrote that he was remembering Mark Walz, the man who helped me become a pastor. Another youth, former youth, who actually drove from Nashville to be here today, wrote on his Facebook status, "My friend, my hero, my mentor, my example, you will be missed. You meant more to me than your earthly mind could have known." And in my own life, Mark took an interest in me when I was in high school. And through the years, our paths have crossed, and he always had a word of encouragement for me. When I graduated from seminary and was appointed to serve here in the Prestonsburg district, Mark continued to be a mentor. But he allowed our relationship to change into more of a peer relationship. And that was a gift that he gave to me. The ways he treated me, I was aware that he considered me a friend and a colleague. And then this summer, as I was appointed to serve here at Pikeville UMC, I knew I was his friend, I knew I was his colleague, but Mark graciously allowed me to become his pastor.